got a chance to speak with him about exactly what his views on vaccinations were, and he said, look, all of my kids are vaccinated. I believe every child in America should be vaccinated. But this is an odd topic in which Rand Paul's libertarian views kind of overlap with his, scientific views as a physician. And in this case, his libertarian views win out.
Look up the word in any encyclopedia, and the definition will come back something to the effect, quote, a political philosophy that upholds liberty as its principal objective, unquote. Seems rather vague, but to be honest, they are also considered the leaders in maximizing autonomy and freedom of choice. All right, now this all sounds good, but what exactly does it really mean, and why are people choosing to go libertarian? Our guest is the Executive Vice President of the Cato Institute and author of The Libertarian Mind, Manifesto for Freedom. Boaz joins us. Davis, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
David, is it simply that people are tired of Republicans and Democrats and they're just looking for something, anything, that would be different from what they've been faced with all their years?
I think you can say that in 2008, the American people rejected the extreme social conservatism and the dangerous foreign policy and endless wars of the Republicans. And in 2014, they rejected the big spending liberalism of the Democratic Party, of President Obama. And so, I think there are a lot of Americans who want a new public philosophy, political philosophy that makes sense. And for a lot of people, I think that philosophy is personal freedom, economic freedom, and being skeptical about getting involved in foreign wars. And a lot of the people who hold those views wouldn't call themselves libertarians, but one of my purposes in writing this book is to tell them, if that's the way you think, then you might be a libertarian.
Well, here's the next thing, David, because a couple of friends and I spoke about this, and one of them calls herself a libertarian, and others, of course, of different political views. And I said, wait a minute, what is it about it that really catches you? And she said, well, sometimes the Republicans upset me so I can go a little Democrat, and then the Democrats upset me and I can go a little Republican. I said, wait a minute, that means you change on a day-to-day basis. She said, yes, that's the beauty of libertarianism. I can change my mind on a given day and nobody really questions me. Now, was she overstating the fact, or is that a pretty good way to put it?
I think she was kidding you.
I'm not so sure. It sounded like she was pretty serious there, Frick. I got to tell you, it sounded like she was very serious.
Well, I'm not representing the Libertarian Party. There are a lot of libertarians who aren't in any particular political party. But as a philosophical libertarian, what I would say is, yes, there are issues I agree with Democrats and liberals on. There are issues that I agree with conservatives and Republicans on. But I think I'm the one who's being consistent. I think personal freedom and economic freedom go together. And if you've got liberal Democrats who say, well, I think people should be able to run their lives any way they want to, except they should give me all their money. And then you've got conservatives saying people should be free from the heavy hand of big government, except we should ban drugs and ban pornography and ban gay marriage. They're the ones, it seems to me, who are being inconsistent.
All right, but wait a minute. When we talk about personal freedom and economic freedoms, there are people who will say, wait a minute, I think that there are people on the right and people on the left who stand for both. So what is the libertarian difference in those? What's the improvement, I guess, that libertarians would look at?
Well, there are people in both parties who I would consider to be libertarian. Sure, there are people who believe in both personal and economic freedom. But if you look at, say, the U.S. Senate, you're not going to find many Democrats who vote against tax increases or for lower government spending or lower regulation. And if you look at the U.S. Senate, almost all the Republicans voted for a constitutional amendment to ban gay marriage. They all support the drug war. So in that sense, I would say among the leaders of the two parties, you see an awful lot of people who do not hold consistently pro-freedom views. But at any rate, I don't want to talk just about politicians. I want to talk about ideas. And the idea of libertarianism is freedom across the board, freedom for people to run their lives and make their choices and create their own lives the way they want to. And anybody, Democrat or Republican, who agrees with that, I'm happy to welcome them.
Are people basically going libertarian then in some reasons, philosophy, I guess here, because they're sick and tired of the lies they're getting from the right and the left? Because quite frankly, it doesn't make a difference whom you vote for or what party you're in, but many times you'll hear people say, I don't know when I'm being told the truth.
Well, I think that's certainly true, and I think a general attitude of skepticism about power, skepticism about politics, skepticism about government is certainly one of the things that inclines people toward libertarianism. And you certainly could look and say, every time I vote Republican, they promise to cut government spending, and they don't. I voted for President Obama, and he said he'd have us out of Iraq in 2 years, and he didn't. He said that he would not be he would not abuse the powers of the presidency the way Bush did, and he does. So it is hard to get from any of the mainstream politicians a consistent commitment to freedom or even a consistent commitment to the actual values they ran on. So yes, that kind of disillusionment pushes people in a direction of let's just keep the government out of as many things as possible.
When you talk to people about potential 2016 presidential candidates, many times they will say that Rand Paul is the quote-unquote libertarian darling, but he's made a number of missteps lately, and there are some people thinking that he rather waffles more than anybody else. Would you consider him to be, at this moment, the quote-unquote standard bearer for the libertarians?
Well, I don't know about standard bearer. I think that he is the candidate, the potential presidential candidate, who is advancing libertarian solutions on more issues than anybody else is. He's had a couple of stumbles. Lots of politicians have had a couple of stumbles. I think he had a good weekend in Iowa just this past weekend, so he seems to be back on track. And look, every politician is less radical than people who write books. So there are lots of things in my book that no political leader right now is going to say, oh yeah, I'm all for that. But I think Rand Paul on taxes, government spending, overregulation, NSA spying, foreign interventionism, on a whole range of issues, I think he does appeal to libertarian voters.
David, I got about 30, 45 seconds left. Are we at a point right now as we get ready to choose a new president in 2016 that you've certainly researched this and you would say to anybody, you ignore the libertarians at your own peril?
Oh, I think that's right, and I think we are seeing a number of libertarian trends right now. We're seeing a movement toward marijuana legalization, toward marriage freedom, also a pushback against the big spending and the Obamacare takeover. All of those things, and people being tired of being involved in all these endless wars, in all those areas, yes, I think libertarian strength is growing, and especially in the Republican Party and the general election, if not the Democratic primary, you had better think about how libertarian voters will respond to your ideas.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, are you a libertarian? If not, learn more about exactly the philosophies of it. A fascinating book, The Libertarian Mind, a Manifesto for Freedom. David, a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much, and good luck with the book.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Thanks.
Break and back with the nation fighting amongst itself for new leadership. And it will have a direct impact on how America deals in that part of the world. And it's a part of the world we don't usually think about. We'll have that and more when we continue right here on MidPoint, where we question everything.